Welcome to another episode of Ask the Zamboni Experts. I'm your host, Doug Peters. Our guests on today's episode are Kim Navarro, who's the skating director of Snoopy's Ice in Santa Rosa, California, and Blake Johnson, the programming director for Snoopy's Ice. Thank you both for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's great to have you both here. Can both of you please share with our listeners about where you grew up and how you ended up at Snoopy's Ice?
Well, I grew up on the ice at Snoopy's home ice here in Santa Rosa, California. My mom was a skating coach and I was her firstborn, so I was just at the rink. And if I was sitting on the ice in a snowsuit, so if I wanted to go anywhere, I needed to skate there. So that's how I started skating here at Snoopy's home ice.
I grew up in Sonoma County, and I think like a lot of California hockey players, I grew up playing street hockey and a little bit of roller hockey, and stuck with that long enough to convince my parents to let me start playing ice hockey about 10 or 11 years old, and took it from there.
Blake, I like to refer to California as the new state of hockey. Growing up in Minnesota, where I refer to that now as the old state of hockey. Do you think that I've got a chance to get that trademarked and make a fortune with California as the new state of hockey?
Well, you could definitely get it trademarked. I don't know about the fortune. I think there'd be a good 20 other states that fight you for that title.
But with all the numbers that we have, and hopefully you're seeing those with USA Hockey, I believe California is the #1 state for at least growing hockey players numbers from years past compared to other states.
Yeah, it's a really, I mean, it's the fastest growing sport in the country in general, and there's a lot of rinks in California, and people don't really realize it sort of flies under the radar. And to a lot of people, ice rinks exist as something to go to once or twice during the holidays and get your fix of ice skating. But there's a ton of people that in California have absolutely fallen in love with the game and play it like nothing else. You know, it's your guys that'll get off work at 10 at night and they'll go play a game and they'll go drink a couple of beers afterwards, and that's just part of the weekly routine. And it's you got to do the weird hours, and you got to have the commitment to be a California hockey player.
Yeah, I've been out here since 1987, and I said that if they ever made it a high school letter sport, that we would see some of the top hockey players coming out of California. And we've already seen some of that with a lot of great players coming out. Austin Matthews out of Arizona, and a few others. I think Bobby Ryan actually got his start out here playing roller hockey. Played for the Ducks for a while. So it really has grown, and we're starting to see more and more schools. Are there any high schools up in the Santa Rosa area that have it as a letter sport, or is that not made it that far yet?
It's not a letter sport, and it doesn't really work for Northern California specifically, just because there's more than a dozen rinks out here. There's just not enough high schools to get behind it. Where for a good decade or decade and a half, the high school age youth hockey has tried to mix in with certain high schools, and it has worked in some places, specifically down in San Jose, just because they're a big facility, and they got a lot of different high schools. So in Santa Rosa, we partnered with Cardinal Newman and essentially just used their name, but there's just not enough kids playing at each high school to really make it a true school by school varsity letter sport right now.
I'll give it a few more years, and with another team north of us now coming into play in the NHL with the Kraken, and with San Jose expanding their facilities, let's hope that that will happen. Kim, your career got started at a very young age, and there was the movie I, Tonya, which as a figure skater, I'm sure that you enjoyed that movie as much as I did.
Yes.
Was it kind of like that for you growing up, where you're skating at a very young age and competing, or did it take a little bit longer till you got a little bit older before you started competing in competitions?
I started competing at a young age, but but I also started performing in shows at a young age, growing up at Snoopy's home ice, where Charles Schultz put on these fantastic shows. And I got to be one of the only kids, or the only kid at the time, in the show. But yeah, I started competing, and let's see, it was when, I mean, I did all the local competitions, but when I was about 12 is when I went to my first junior nationals. And that is when I started deciding that there was the one discipline of ice dance that I really wanted to do. I went to junior nationals in both pairs and ice dance. And in pairs, I was thrown and I had to land on one foot, or I was thrown and the boy had to catch me. And in ice dance, my feet stayed on the ground and I shimmied my shoulders and we got first place. So that kind of sealed the deal for me. And I wanted to be an ice dancer.
You kind of beat me to my question of how you migrated into ice dancing. Can you explain how ice dancing differs from other pairs disciplines in ice skating?
Yeah, so there's the four disciplines in skating that you'll see on TV during the Olympics. There's the pairs event, where they do jumps and spins and big overhead lifts. And there's the singles, men and ladies. And then the ice dance is more inspired by ballroom dance. The lifts are lower, the dancing is much closer. Um, you have to do part of a pattern dance in it. There's like compulsory moves you have to do. So it's one of the four disciplines, well, outside of also there's synchronized skating and other things. But again, it's not as easy as I made it sound. As I came to find out when I was 12, it's not as easy as shaking your shoulders and winning first place, much to my disappointment. But it is just more rhythmic and more musical, which is really something that I love.
And who in the U.S. are the leading pairs or dance skaters that are out there now? We've had the opportunity. Scott Moyer from Canada joined us for a podcast, along with a legend in his mind, Mr. Santee, who skated in the 1980 Olympics. So, who would be the skaters now that some of our listeners might recognize, either past or current?
Well, so when we are looking towards this coming Olympics season, Evan Bates and Madison Chalk, and then Madison and Zach, they're our top two U.S. teams, and they will be both likely to medal in the Olympics. But of course, Merrill Davis and Charlie White, they won the Olympics. They were the first American team to do so and the only American team to do so in ice dance. And so they are just like, we owe them, the skating community owes them the world. They were just so, they've done so much for our sport. So they're, in my mind, royalty.
I think that we got to meet them in Beijing at a trade show a couple of years ago. Unfortunately for me, I don't recognize the figure skaters the way that that some others might. And I felt one of my most guilty moments in life was at the Olympics in 2002, watching the ladies' final competition and being probably about 50 feet from where Michelle Kwan took her stumble to cost her the gold medal. And I'm sitting there watching this and thoroughly enjoying it, but knowing that I've got friends in the industry who would be far more in love with the moment and passionate. And it's like I've had opportunities to see Stanley Cup games that I've turned down because I'm going, I'm not a fan of that team. I'd rather have somebody else see it. So, and we were lucky enough to meet them. And then Tong, who is a Chinese, he and his wife, I believe, were pair skaters, Tong and Pang, and competed in Vancouver. And he purchased a machine from us for a facility that he's got over in Beijing. So, well, I'd like to condense my story, but unfortunately, I'm long-winded in my discussions.
That's awesome. That I'm jealous of the circles that you live in. But you know, well, it's always okay for skaters not to be recognized because we need to stay humble. So it's good to know. It's good to know that people don't know skaters.
Well, if you're part of you're not near old enough because I think you were born after it happened, but the 1980 Olympic men's hockey team that won gold at Lake Placid, I've been blessed to meet several of them. And also I'm old enough that I was able to meet several of the players from the 1960 Olympic team that won gold medal at Squaw Valley. So I consider myself to be very blessed to work for a company that's enabled me to partake in a lot of these things. Are you familiar with the Jerry and Debbie Lane? I'm not sure if they're ice dancers or just pair skaters. Jerry and Debbie are out of the Denver area, and I've seen pictures of them. Again, they're of my vintage, so maybe they're before your time, before you would have learned of their skating.
I feel like I should know them, so I feel silly that I don't. Yes, I mean, it sounds so familiar. So
Okay. Well, they've been actively involved in the ISI and the PSA and USFS, so you may have run across their paths at one point in time. Kim, your career probably took you many places. Is there any place in the world that's a favorite for your travels?
one of my favorite cities has been Vienna because I love soccer torte, that chocolate cake, and that's always a great post-competition treat. And then I just love going to Japan. Japan's amazing, and always getting to skate there has been. They really love skating, and yeah, and I love Japan. So those are my two.
Great. So does that make you a fan of sushi, or is that not on the palate?
Yes, I love sushi, but I feel like a dumb American when I go there because our sushi is very like I like a California roll. So that's not right. But I love the food in Japan, and I appreciate getting to eat a little bit more authentically when I'm there.
Well, when Paula comes up to visit next time, have her grab you and take you out. She is a sushi connoisseur, and she can teach you all about the different kinds of sushi and what's good to eat and what's not.
Perfect.
Blake, have you traveled with playing hockey, or is it pretty much stay within California and participate here?
It's I haven't done much, especially internationally. Pretty much west of the Mississippi is where I've stayed, but all the mountain states down to Texas and up and down the coast.
And you're rather young as well. Have you noticed how much it's changed? I know for me, it's a dramatic change since it all pretty much goes back to the Wayne Gretzky trade is what burst hockey upon the West Coast. Not that, there wasn't already teams here, but have you noticed that hockey has expanded into some of the other regions of the western half of the U.S.?
Yeah, and I think that I mean even without the NHL, there's a lot of towns in California and along the West Coast and even into the Rockies that have hockey rinks with great programs and a lot of support behind it. But it's a lot like Canada was before television became big, where all the small towns had their junior team or their senior team, and that whole town would be behind that team and fall in love with it. And that's a lot like it is here. We just have access to all the different games on television all the time. But towns and communities that have ice rinks love it and support it. And there's a lot of good programs that aren't really nationally or even regionally recognized.
Blake, can you tell our listeners what your role is as hockey coordinator at Snoopy Ice, as well as who and what the Santa Rosa Growlers are?
So I'm the hockey coordinator. Our youth program is separate from us. So we book their ice and help with their events and make sure that they have as smooth a building to operate out of as possible. I run our adult league and our adult league tournaments, and that includes the Snoopy Senior World Hockey Tournament, which has been going on for more than 40 years now. That draws 70 plus teams every July out here. We have a 10-day tournament with more than 100 games on our one sheet of ice over that week and a half, and it's become a destination and a bit of a bucket list item for a lot of adult hockey players to finally come out here and come play in the Snoopy tournament. It really got its start because Charles Schultz obviously adopted that tournament. It started down in Southern California and he moved it up here in the 70s, and it was a chance for regular guys and men and women, just regular folks, to come and meet a celebrity that's internationally recognized and play in our beautiful building. And then talking about the Growlers, it's we're a senior A team, and we play a pretty damn high level of hockey. Obviously, we're not professional hockey players. We all have day jobs, and we all love the sport and want to keep playing it into our 20s and 30s. And we make our way around the Western United States. There's a big senior A. There's a lot of senior A teams in the Rockies, in Colorado and Utah, Wyoming and Idaho, and basically it's a bunch of guys that want to play the highest level of hockey, and we play well enough to sell out a building and attract a crowd and really put on a good show in some communities that might lack entertainment, and fit 800 people in a rink for a night and give them some beer and everybody has a great time.
Do you run into any teams out of Minnesota? I think that there is a team from Warroad, and then is it Buck's Furniture? Is that does that ring a bell with you?
Yeah, there's that league out there. I think it's the Great Lakes Hockey League. That's been around for, if not 100 years, pretty close to 100 years. They're the only senior A team that's affiliated with USA Hockey, just because they've been around for so flippin' long. And there's a lot of teams, a lot of history, a lot of great buildings out there. One of the guys on our team plays out there. I'm gonna kick myself for not remember the name of his team, but ideally in the next year or two we'll be able to make a road trip out there and play a couple of teams, and hopefully we can get them into Santa Rosa and show them the California senior hockey experience.
Well, there's a lot of great buildings in Minnesota, a lot of great hockey history up in Warroad. We've had the opportunity to do some podcasts with some of the Minnesota hockey players that I've had connections to, and one of the ones that sticks in my mind a lot is Henry Boucher, who came out of Warroad, Minnesota, and played in Native American, played in the Olympics for USA Hockey, as well as playing in the NHL with the Red Wings and the North Stars. So great history, and I hope you get the opportunity to go out there and play in some of the old barns up in northern Minnesota that have some of the great history. Can you expand a little bit on, are there any limitations on the number of teams that are allowed to play in the Snoopy's tournament, or are there, what do they have to have age bracket wise? Is it something you have to be over a certain age? Maybe a little more history on that, please.
Yeah, so the tournament is the youngest age is the 40 and up division, and we go all the way up to 75 plus. We shoot for about 72 teams to fill out all of our divisions, and we'll go 40 ABC, 45 AB, 50 plus ABCD, so on and so on until we get 17, 18 divisions that are relatively competitive. And we got teams that come out that have always wanted to and finally make the journey out, and we got teams that have been coming out for 20 straight years, and they make it a point that every summer they're going to come out here and enjoy this region of the world and go play some golf and go visit some wineries or breweries and really make a whole week of it. The way we structure the tournament, it's you got 3 games. We don't have a championship. We'll award first, second, third place just based on those 3 round robin games, and it turns it into a tournament where it's not really about winning and losing. We don't have any interest in having the emotions that come with adult hockey when teams are really trying to win a trophy in a certain game down by a couple goals. It's really about enjoying the game and seeing people that you see once a year and really taking in what Santa Rosa and Sonoma County has to offer.
A little bit like the Little League World Series, where it's more about the event than it is about who wins and who loses. Yeah,
don't get me wrong. People bring back their gold medals, and they'll show me the 8 gold medals they have in the 15 years they've been here. And obviously, whenever you get on the ice and strap them on, nobody wants to lose. But at the end of the day, everybody's out here to have a great time in a great facility and just enjoy playing the game they love in a beautiful part of the country.
There would be some people who would be very disappointed if I didn't make this connection. Have you, in your career, been fortunate enough to skate with or meet any of the members of the 1980 Olympic gold medal winning men's hockey team?
No, I haven't been lucky enough, haven't had the privilege to do that.
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, there's a lot of those guys that are still out there skating. Maybe there needs to be a division that those guys can compete in and have them invited out to visit the wonderful facility that you're at.
I think that's a great idea, and based on the conversation, we'll be looking to you for some contacts.
I'll be happy to hook you up with the lady who's in charge of the promotion of that team. Here's a question for both of you. Do you ever battle over how you want the ice temp to be, with the figure skaters preferring the ice to be a little bit softer and hockey players preferring it to be harder? And if so, who wins that battle?
Yeah, there absolutely is a battle. We replaced our floor a couple years ago. We had a 50-year-old sand floor, and with the original pipes that we replaced just a couple of years ago with a concrete floor and new pipes, and we've definitely kept the ice thinner, and therefore it's definitely harder and more suited for hockey like it hasn't been in the past. So pre 2018, the hockey players would always give the arena some grief and talk about how we had relatively soft ice, and since then we're hearing about how hard our ice is. So that 5 p.m. and on crowd loves what we have right now. The morning crowd would like us to put a little bit more water down before their sessions and soften it up a little bit.
I will say that overall, I've heard good things about the ice, especially since the renovation. But I am trying to get to know that side better, because I will say, while I competed, when I was a competitive figure skater, I cared about the ice a lot. This was on the East Coast where I was training, and I cared about every little nick in my blade. But in 2010, I turned professional, and everything switches when you do that. So I don't even pay attention to the ice. There's like a big hole in the ice. It doesn't matter. You're skating outside, you're inside, you're skating your 300th show of the year, and you're not even paying attention. So I do a particularly bad job of paying attention to the ice, and I'm trying to do a better job now that I'm in this new role as the skating director. So for me, if there's ice, I'm happy. So, but so I will get better so I can fight with Blake on this topic.
With the machine that you have, it goes back several years, and maybe we need to have more discussions with Tamara to see when a new machine might be in the budget. Are you folks considering, or maybe you might not be aware of, products such as fast ice and level ice that will help improve the level sheet of the ice surface, as well as being able to control your ice temperature to maybe satisfy both sides of the skating world? Is that something either of you might have an interest in seeing on the new machine?
Our ice is really good, and we have some really skilled people taking care of our ice right now that have been around for a long time. And with the new floor, we've been able to dive into exactly what we want to do to the ice at a certain time, whether it's hockey or figure skating, and pay more attention to it. And obviously, whatever tools and technologies out there now that wasn't around when we bought our machine and installed new chillers 20 years ago or so. I know there's a lot more out there, but as an arena, the ice is what we have to sell, right? So we want to make that as good as possible. And if there's tools that we can use to do that, we're absolutely interested.
Do either of you have any horror stories about ice conditions skating in your career outside of your facility? Obviously, that facility has great ice, but maybe without naming a facility, maybe share with our listeners what kind of things, or what was maybe the worst thing you ever ran into while you're out playing or skating?
I mean, playing hockey, I got the traditional stuff that probably everybody's going to face at some point in their life, whether the Zamboni breaks down for whatever reason and you're playing a third game in a row on a sheet that's just been hand scraped like the old days, or a Zam getting stuck on the ice with a conditioner down for a few minutes and leaving a trench. And when an arena's on a schedule, you don't have time to spend 20 minutes patching those holes, and you just gotta deal with what you're dealt and know where those hazards are.
Yeah, and I've skated on a lot of outdoor rinks. One in Lake Placid at that hotel. Anyways, it was melting, and we had to do such a watered down version of our performance, and then we were supposed to skate with guests. And I remember my skating partner pushing a guest on a chair, and the chair went into this mush, and the guest fell over, and my partner basically did a front flip over this guest. Everyone was safe. It was a nice little trick, but yeah, I've skated on tons of outdoor ice. That is, ever changing from hour one to hour two. And again, we all stayed on top of it, though, on top of the ice, so that was good.
That's always good. And it's amazing to me, in all the years that I've been in the industry, to watch what some surfaces are that skaters are subjected to. And I think it's more in the figure skating world than it is in the ice hockey world. Although I have seen the outdoor game in Vegas where the Kings played out there, and they were trying to figure out how to make ice there. There was also one down in I think the Suncoast Dome down in Tampa, where they were trying to freeze ice on a surface that was hotter than bejeebers, and they were able to pull the game off for the most part, but had a glycol leak when one of the lines was punctured during the game. But it's amazing that you're able to, Kim, to get out there on like these canned ice shows that they create, put them on stages, and just not only this quality that you're skating on, but the size of the surface. How do you adapt to that?
Yeah, that's tricky. I feel like especially for ice dance, I always like skating with a little bit more speed. So when you skate on something so small, you really have to just go from kind of one station to the next to show off your big trick. And then if you're an ice dancer, maybe you don't necessarily have big tricks. But yeah, my skating partner is what he'll say before we do something like a show on small ice. He says, "Big face, little feet." So we would just try to perform as much as we could and not really move.
That's amazing. It takes a lot of talent to do that, and I respect skaters that get out there not only just on something like that, but with those silly little points that are on the end of figure skates. As a hockey player, I don't think those things should be on there, but there's a lot of people in the industry that I've met that I respect that say that it's vital to being able to skate, and that they say that it's actually easier to learn to skate in figure skates than it is in hockey skates. But as somebody who's used to pushing off on his toes as a hockey skater, those things come in the way and caused me to face plant.
So you never learned on figure skates?
No, I learned on hockey is big back in Minnesota, and that was what I adapted to. And it's a difference. And again, there's people I respect that will tell me that it's far easier to instruct somebody who's never skated to get on a pair of figure skates and then transition to hockey skates. But I'll take your opinion on that as well.
It is way easier to learn on figure skates, at least right in the beginning, I think. But I say that as somebody who is very unfamiliar with hockey skates. But I will say, Blake knows this. One of my dreams is to do a Battle of the Blades type fundraiser or show at some point and get our hockey players onto figure skates, because one of the reasons is those great videos of them tripping on their toe picks. Yeah, for that reason. Well, so it's not for that reason, but I did that show in Canada, Battle of the Blades, and that's all their B-roll footage is hockey players, well-known, really great hockey players getting tripped up by those toe picks.
That's going to lead me to a question I was going to get to, but since you've opened the door for it, I'm going to ask away. Can you tell us about your experience with Battle of the Blades? How great was it? And were you ever considered for skating with the stars or skating with the celebrities, which was even far more entertaining to watch people who had never skated before trying to perform some of the tricks that they wanted them to? And I believe it was Kris Jenner or Bruce Jenner at the time, that it's now Caitlyn Jenner, was one of the contestants. And just interesting stuff watching it as an interested observer. So tell us a little bit about your experiences.
Right. Well, so that skating with the stars, or I don't know if that's exactly what it was called. I was not in the country during that time, but I knew a lot of people working on that show, and it sounds like it was a wild adventure. And the thing that makes that that formula a little bit harder or funnier or more entertaining is that these are people that have no experience with skating. So it's is tricky. That's why the Battle of the Blades show in Canada is so fantastic, because these are people very familiar with the ice. Maybe not familiar with figure skates, but what those hockey players could do was insane. I mean, they did split triple twists with some of their partners. They would do. I got my partner Russ Courtnall to do a bracket, which is a difficult turn in skating. We would do bounce spins, but that was something that maybe wasn't accessible to the people who were just learning to skate for the first time. But yeah, I think those shows are so much fun because you learn that even hockey players have inner showmen in them. They like a little sparkle, they like a little spotlight, they like some music. So, Blake, that's my big dream.
I think you guys need to make that happen for the Christmas show. I think it would just be spectacular.
Yes, I agree.
And it's funny, I've sat on the ISI board, which is an organization that serves the ice skating industry. For our founder, Frank Zamboni, was one of the founding fathers of that. And we've talked about that at their great big championships that they have, about getting the board together and have the board do a production number. And some of the skate, like I used to skate, and now my body won't listen to what my brain's telling it to do. So I've kind of given up the hockey aspect of it so that I don't fall down and have a life-altering event now at my advanced age. And it's something that I think would be great, because we could all do a twizzle, or we could do a wally wally, or one of those other really technical moves that the skating world knows and loves.
I want to see the twizzle. Yeah. Good use of vocabulary there.
I've learned a little bit in the 40 years I've been involved in the industry. So one question for both of you. Have either of you driven a Zamboni machine? And if so, how skilled would you both say that you are? And how would you rate the other on their driving skills or lack thereof?
Yeah, I drive the Zamboni pretty regularly. I used to do it more so, but I've been doing a good 4.5 years, and I love it, honestly. It's 15 minutes of Zen, where you get your Zen ice sheet and make sure it's nice and flat and you didn't miss any spots, and you got the right amount of water and you got the right amount of blade, and it's a nice little take a break from your computer challenge every single day.
So Blake is much better at driving the Zamboni than I am, because I only recently upgraded from a two-door Bug to a compact SUV. So I'm still working my way towards ever driving a Zamboni.
I think that should be something that should be part of this competition thing. If you agree to learn to drive a Zamboni machine, then Blake maybe agrees to doing a skating competition with figure skates on. What do you say?
I like it. The stakes are getting higher.
There we
Yeah,
go.
we can work something out. That sounds good to me.
Don't you think it'd be fun to watch somebody who's a very proficient skater try to learn how to drive one of those great big beasts as they're maneuvering it around the rink? Everybody thinks that it's easy, that it's like a little bit opposite of NASCAR, where we go slow and turn to the right, and they go fast and turn to the left. So I think that this would be something I want to be there for this, so that we can video this and we can use it on our social media, that Kim, the longtime skater, is now a proficient Zamboni driver, and Blake is the one that's going to do that.
Perfect. And when
Yeah,
I
as
mess
long as I
up,
don't have to. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was like, when I mess up, just for the record, I never said it was easy, because I will show you how not easy it is. But what were you going to say, Blake?
I was just gonna say, as long as I don't have to skate on it after you resurface it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Kim, one of the things that I noticed on your wiki page is it says that you retired at the young age of 29. Now, how great of a feeling is that? I'm many years the senior, and I've been dreaming about retirement. What is it like to be retired at 29?
Oh, well, then I just started getting paid, which was awesome. So, right, I retired from competitive skating, and I'm sure the wiki page did not say at the young age because um, that is a pretty old age to still be competing. But luckily, in dance, that's not particularly old because ice dance is a little easier on the body. But yeah, so then what it felt like to retire from competitive skating was to get paid to dress as a neon snake in a random city in Germany. So that's what retirement looked like for me.
And have you enjoyed the 3 or 4 years of retirement that it's been?
Thank you. Yes, it's only been a very brief retirement because I'm only 29 and a half. Plus, I have loved professional skating. I will say that's something that I've always loved growing up at Snoopy's Home Ice and having experience in the professional skating world. You can't turn professional when you're a kid, really. So all the, the competitive skating track was the one available to me. But then once I retired and got to do a couple years, if not a lot more years of professional skating, that has been just the greatest experience of my life.
I'd like to ask this next question to both of you. If you could both share with our listeners what it's like to be part of one of the most iconic and well-known ice rinks in the world. Share some of your experiences that you've been able to be a part of, and what makes that facility so special to both you and the skaters that come to visit.
On a day-to-day basis, we have people coming just to walk inside the building and see what it is. People coming from around the world. Sonoma County in general is a bit of a tourist destination, and to have the museum, the Schultz Museum on the campus, brings a lot of folks that wouldn't necessarily go into any sort of hockey rink. So we do get a lot of folks coming in just looking around. And if nobody's been here, I'd say it's the most unique building that I've ever been in, the most unique arena. It has a Swiss chalet theme, which with a bunch of stuff on the front of the building, a bunch of little windows and little garden boxes on the outside, and then on the inside we have a bunch of faux windows and houses, and we have 4 giant murals that cover our wall of the Swiss Alps in the springtime, and it's a big departure from the typical barn that folks are in that's been repurposed. That's been a meat packing plant, and now we shoved a couple of ice sheets in it. And this place, it's obviously a rink, so it's not warm, but it feels warm when you come in here, and it's really welcoming. Whether you're here to skate for the first time, or you're a weekly skater, or you're coming here for a competition, whether it's figure skating or hockey, it's just a whole different atmosphere inside this building.
Yeah, and I think Blake's already touched on it. It's more than a skating rink because it is what Charles Schultz built for himself and the community. So it's where he came and would eat breakfast before he'd work on his Peanuts comic strip. And it's part of a larger campus that is Peanuts. And you can feel that when you're at the rink, that this place was created for multiple things, for figure skating, for hockey, and for entertainment. Sometimes when I grew up there, the ice would get covered and a huge extreme inline skating, skateboarding, BMX show would take place. And Tony Hawk performed there, and Matt Hoffman, which is insane to say that this thing happened at a skating rink. And there would be Camp Rollerblade across the street, and there'd be multiple ramps. And then the ice would get small, and these amazing holiday Christmas shows would come into town. And I think it speaks volumes that people like Robin Cousins and Scott Hamilton and so many elite skaters would spend their Christmas in Santa Rosa to be a part of this Christmas show and be a part of the facility. So I don't know, that just, you can feel that in there, even though maybe not all those events still happen, but you know that it's more than a skating rink.
Well, and you lobbed me a softball, so that leads me into the next question I had is, can you share with our listeners about the ice skating show? Did you get the opportunity to skate with Richard Dwyer, Mr. Debonair, or is he somebody that you still get the opportunity to bring up for that skating show?
Oh my gosh, if we had any event where Richard was invited, I know he would be in Santa Rosa in a heartbeat. It's a home to him. But yeah, I was Richard's page, which means I brought out the bouquet of flowers he would give to an audience member, and that was a huge honor, and one that I was able to do a couple years ago and a couple years prior to that, and it just which was nice. But it's different when an older woman brings out those flowers than a young than a young kid. It wasn't as cute, I will say, but yeah. Richard is one of the many amazing skaters that have come through our doors.
Truly blessed to have him on one of our podcasts earlier in our listing of podcasts. And I go back to when I was a young boy, and my dad worked for the North Stars and worked at the Met Center. And one of the deals for us as kids was always getting to go see the ice capades. And we were fortunate enough to have pretty decent seats. And Mr. Debonair coming out with his top hat and tails and giving out the roses to the ladies that were seated around the ends and sides of the rink. So he's truly one of the nicest gentlemen I have ever met in my entire life, and still quite the showman. And I hope that he's able to perform for you guys and for the guests that would come up to the facility the next time that you guys have a show. You touched a little bit, both of you touched a little bit on the different things that are at the site, not just the rink, but there are other things such as possibly Snoopy Gallery, Schultz Museum. Could either of you or both of you touch a little bit on what else is there besides the ice rink for people to take in when they come up in that area?
Yeah. So we have the Charles M. Schultz Museum and Research Center. I think I said that in the right order. That's just across the street from us on our campus, and that's the big draw for the people outside of our community. We have a gift shop and gallery with all your Snoopy swag that you could want. We have a great upstairs feature that shows the history of the building. And then also on the other side of the campus, we have what used to be Sparky's studio, which is still being worked out of. They're putting in an archive room also over there for a lot of the originals and the stuff that's been around for a long time. So there's a ton of stuff to do. We have a baseball field across the street. There used to be a roller hockey rink across the street. There's definitely a full day of stuff to see around the campus.
Kim, do you have anything to add about things people might want to see either on site or in the area?
Yeah, I do. The museum, the Charles M. Schultz Museum and Research Center, that is just right across the street from the rink, is a highlight for me and my children. There's one room where you can do coloring, and they invite you to post your picture up on the bulletin board, and at the same time they're playing some Peanuts movies in that room on the TV, which is great. And then separately there's a movie theater, and there's a whole rotation of Peanuts movies or videos that are playing. And then they have I guess you say recreated. It really feels like they just cut and transported Sparky's desk in the area he worked in when he created his strip is there, and it's so much history right there. It's amazing. Yeah, it makes me nostalgic, and I imagine even if you hadn't seen that before, or hadn't met Sparky, that you get it though. Like, you get that this is history and this is really fascinating. So, and the exhibits they have at the museum that rotate are awesome. They're awesome. So I just can't recommend the museum enough.
Well, I believe he has ties to Minnesota, and another life ago, the person that he characterized as Charlie Brown was an actual person, as I understand it, and he spoke at a high school event for a former person in my life, and He's such a special man. It's unfortunate that he's not with us, and what a legacy he created with his wonderful cartoon strip, and just something that the Zamboni family has always treasured. How kind Mr. Schultz was to talk about the Zamboni, and not only to do that in his cartoon strips, but also to be a customer of ours for so many years. And it goes back to, I think the very first machine that was there was an HDA that would have gone back to like 1968. And I think that I sold that machine as a used machine into Rhinelander, Wisconsin, is where the last time I recollect that machine being. So it's been a great experience for us. I have not got to spend as much time up there as I would like to, and maybe that's something, if I can work my magic and get a new machine, that I'll be able to come up and visit for a longer period of time, and just enjoy all of the things that the site has to offer. I'm going to go on to the last segment. I consider myself to be a foodie, and if I was standing up and you could see a profile view of me, you'd understand why I consider myself to be a foodie. I'd like to lose about 25 to 30 pounds of my foodiness, but that's been a challenge lately. I'm going to start with you, Kim. White Castle, yay or nay?
Oh, it's a nay for me because I don't eat meat, but I used to really like White Castle when I was younger.
Okay, good for you. Now, did you get the opportunity to have them fresh and cooked in front of you, or just the frozen version that you can get at the grocery store?
Frozen, frozen all the way.
Oh, you need to have the full experience. If you don't even need to eat it. You can just go see it. And it's usually best served at about 1:30 in the morning, after maybe visiting a bar or two, after skating or playing a hockey game. Blake's kind of nodding his head. Blake, have you ever had the experience to visit a White Castle at that hour of the morning?
I've pulled a couple out of the freezer a time or two, but I haven't had the in-person full experience.
Oh, we need to get you to Minnesota. When you go to there to play hockey, you need to make sure that you visit the White Castle on Lake Street. You might be able to see a sign there that said Doug was here.
I'll keep an eye out for it.
Okay. Blake, we'll start with you. What's your favorite food? Your go-to food?
Uh, it's either got to be sushi or some street tacos.
And is there a great street taco place up there in Santa Rosa that you can recommend?
I got one right across the street here, Ortega's Market. Fantastic. The carnitas there is second to none, I think. The al pastor is fantastic. You can't really go wrong. You can get something else each day of the week.
I was just up to Seattle to visit the Kraken's new practice facility, and it was a spectacular facility. And I was looking for something to find, and there was walking distance away what said it was a Mexican place. And when I walked down to find it, it was like a taco truck parked in a parking lot that was there stationary. And their carnitas was spectacular. So if you ever get up to visit the Kraken's practice facility, you'll have to give it a try. It's in a parking lot with surprisingly a Starbucks. I guess there's a couple Starbucks up in Seattle, along with a McDonald's and a 76 station. So, and how about you, Kim? Since you're not a meat eater, what would be your go-to food?
Ooh, I also like sushi and Mexican food, but I really like the banh mi the tofu banh mi that you can get at, I think it's called Kettle's. Blake can correct me if I'm wrong. It's across the street from the rink. It's a Vietnamese place, and yeah, tofu banh mi. I like that.
Not a big fan of that tofu stuff. I've had some and I can eat it as long as it's spicy, but the texture, the flavor, well, I think I might have to take a pass and go for a Portillo's Italian beef, or a slice of pizza. What is the best meal that you've ever had in all your travels? We'll start with you, Kim.
You're not gonna like this. We were in, oh man, now I'm gonna forget if it was We were in Japan, and it was a whole tofu meal. It was like 12 different courses of tofu, but it was really good. It was really good. But I will say one other, I did a show outside of Chicago, and it was around the time of my husband, around the same time as my husband's birthday. And we went to a fancy restaurant that they would do like scientific y, almost like experimenty things with their food. And one was like a balloon made of taffy. It was really weird because I felt very like I had poor manners, but you like ate the balloon, you know, or they'd be like, oh, this plant that was on your table is actually your next course. You know, it was fun. It was memorable. I can't remember how it all tasted, but it was memorable that it happened.
That's pretty interesting. I think the most bizarro world one was when I was in Sweden, and they were had Paula as a host who was kind enough to include me in the meal, and it was a Michelin 5-star, which I don't understand because I'm used to, the White Castle is pretty high up on my connoisseur list, but they grated reindeer hoof and put it on something, and that was pretty far out there, but it was probably the best meal I've ever had, other than a meal down in Dallas. That was a spectacular meal as well. How about you, Blake?
I'd probably say in Mexico, stopping on the side of the road to another taco spot that had just the most authentic stuff down in Baja, right off the side of the road, and really it's probably not the best food I've ever had, but just the experience around it of coming home on this week-long trip and being exhausted and just trying to get back to the States and finding this unreal gem that you'd never ever make it to unless you're hungry right at that time.
I love that we have another person who's willing to do roadside tacos. I have an experience with roadside chicken down in Puerto Vallarta that my mother is still wondering why I'm alive to this day. Um, Favorite place that either of you have been to? We're going to start with you, Blake.
Um, Honestly, I got to do a kind of cop out answer. I'd say Mexico. I went down. We drove down Baja to this place right on the eastern side of Baja on the west, right there in the Gulf, and was out there for a few days and swam with some whale sharks and got to do a bunch of snorkeling and it was a great experience with it. Not a super touristy destination, and being out there with a bunch of friends and having a great trip and doing something that's off the beaten path that wouldn't necessarily be in any vacation brochures.
So slightly better than Barstow?
I mean, well, Barstow, you're only halfway there to where you're going, so you're definitely not trying to stay there.
Okay. And Kim, how about you?
I'm gonna space on I can't believe it, on the name, but there was a small ski town we went to in Japan after one of our shows. And it was, they had the hot springs everywhere. They had hot springs that you just like a foot trough. It was interesting. You could put your feet in the hot water, and then there was a separate spot where people would come and put their eggs in to just hard boil their eggs. But we went skiing, and it was amazing, and we had some good sushi. And I'm so sorry that I can't think of the name, but it was like my top trip ever.
I'm wondering if that was like Nico or on the way up. Years ago when I was in Japan, we went up and stayed at a resort area that was up in the mountains. I'm not much of a snow guy kind of guy. I like the sand between my toes instead of the snowflakes, doing 25 years of penance having to deal with that crap in Minnesota. So I much prefer going to a sandy beach. Maybe Maui would be a place that I'd be okay and just dropping dead over there. So one thing I wanted to ask earlier was you have two daughters, Kim, and are you getting both of them into skating? Or are you going to maybe get them into a sport called hockey that they could get a scholarship playing at one of many universities back east of here?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I My two daughters are very different. It's a dumb thing to say, but I'm shocked at how different two people can be. And I feel like people have already told me my oldest, who's 4, is going to be a figure skater, and my youngest, who's 2, is going to be a hockey player. And it kind of seems like that's going to happen. My 4-year-old did just finish her first ice show. She was in a little ice show this summer. And my 2-year-old, I got her on the ice, and she was like wild. So we seem to be on the right track for that. One figure skater, one hockey player.
Well, that's good. We did another podcast. I'm going to shamelessly advertise here with Lindsay Frye, who was born in Tucson and grew up in Chandler, I believe that it is. And I could be wrong with that, but she was an Olympian and played on the U.S. women's hockey team in Russia and won a silver medal. And she is a very engaging young lady who is also the analyst on the radio for the Phoenix Coyotes. And I think that maybe if you introduce both your daughters to the sport of hockey, she might be able to help you. She's got some great training programs. So I think that it's something. Give them a shot and see what they can do. They might surprise you and turn out to be great Olympian hockey players.
Okay, noted. I will. I will.
Blake, how about you? Do you have kids as yet?
No kids.
No kids. Okay, well, you'll have to wait for that. Would you get them into figure skating with those little pointy things on the front of the skates, or would they be more hockey players?
Well, my future non-existent kids, I'd put them on skates and see which edges they prefer to use. If they want to use that toe pick, they can use that toe pick. I'd love to have some hockey players. Figure skaters would be all right, as long as if they want to do ice sports, that's the biggest thing.
That's great. We need more ice skaters so that we can sell more of our product. We appreciate your passion for that. And then the last question I'm going to have for both of you, and we'll start out with Blake. Who are your sports teams? Do you have a favorite team and favorite sport? Are you a hockey fan? Obviously. What's your hockey team? Would it be the Ducks of Anaheim, or are you more going to be like a Shark guy, being closer to them?
I'm a hockey fan first. I'm a Sharks fan second. It's yeah, sort of just born into that around the same time, and been through a lot. And one of the, I think, underrated, long-suffering fan bases with the disappointment. It's been great to have some really good teams that would always break your heart, and probably entering into a few dark seasons ahead of us. I'm also a baseball guy, big fan of the Giants, and there's not many things in this world that I hate, especially when it comes to sports. But there's nothing and I cannot stand more than Dodger blue. So I might be a bigger Dodger hater than I am all of the other things that I just said.
So your favorite team would be who's ever playing the Dodgers?
Yeah, my two favorite teams are the Giants and whoever's playing the Dodgers. Absolutely.
There we go. There we go. Now, you said that you're a long-suffering fan. I beg to differ. Your team, the Sharks, were originally tied to Minnesota, and the Guns were given a deal to have an expansion team. You don't know disappointment until you are a Minnesota fan. And maybe we need to introduce you some books about Minnesota heartbreak. 4 lost Super Bowls, 2 lost Stanley Cups. It's gotten so bad as a Minnesota fan, and not that it's a bad thing because they're a very great team and a great organization, but I've tied myself to the WNBA Minnesota Lynx so that I can actually cheer for a team that wins. That's where I've gotten down into. So I don't want to hear about the fact that the Sharks maybe have had a couple bumps in the road and maybe not brought Stanley home to where it could be, but you really need to get some focus on what is being a losing fan and take a look at what's gone on in Minnesota.
Well, you got unlimited ponds out there to go cry yourself to sleep with every night, and we're stuck playing ball hockey in a cul-de-sac, all right?
But would you rather pick oranges and apricots or shovel snow?
Yeah, I'll take the oranges and apricots.
There you go. There you go. Kim, how about you? Are you a sports fan?
Oh, my husband's gonna die when knowing that you asked this question when I tell him because he makes fun of me. I obviously really like watching skating because that's the thing I know and the thing I did. Um, so that's what I get. I get really excited when I see that on TV. My husband's a huge Giants fan, and my skating partner is a huge Eagles fan. So I had moved, as you do when you become partners with a male in the sport, the female moves to the male. So at whatever, 24, 25, I found myself in Philadelphia with this like huge Eagles fan skating. So I just had to like push back against that. So I had to not be interested in the Eagles. I like the Phillies a bit, but yeah. So I am super lame, but I had to stand my ground and not get involved in cheering for sports too much. But I will say, right before things shut down here in California, I was excited to get ready to go to my first Growlers game because I went to the ice arena one day and I saw a stand like they had been selling beer or something the night before, and I was like, wait, what was happening at this rink? That looks like fun. I want to go. So I was just about to become a Growlers fan because I something in my hometown and paired with beer. So I'll pick that up when it starts again.
So you're a fan of barley pops. That's a good thing. The adult beverage. I'm guessing that you've never heard the term barley pop before.
No, is that a Minnesota thing?
Well, I don't know if it's a Minnesota thing or not, but it might be a hockey thing where we're going to go out and have a couple barley pops after the game.
See, I'm not yet a hockey fan, but I'm working on it.
Okay. Well, and when you said Eagles fan, I couldn't think that you were deprived of oxygen in the birth canal that would make you a Philadelphia Eagles fan,
I,
that you had to be a BC Eagles fan.
no,
Go you Eagles from
yeah.
Boston College. No?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not neither. But my skating
Okay.
partner is he's born and bred Philadelphian, so he loved the
Did
Eagles and was
did he
surprised that not everyone did. And she
did he
stinks.
take a couple tumbles on the ice and
I,
damaged his head?
all signs have point to yes. So
Okay.
yeah, he gets
Yeah. He
a lot
wasn't
of
the
stuff.
fan that went when they had the Super Bowl in Minnesota that stole the seat and was brazen enough to check it in as carry or his baggage on his flight home.
No, no.
Okay. All right.
But
Well,
he did go to Minnesota just to be present for the Super Bowl.
well, I hope he spent lots of money back there. We do have one of the Zamboni family members, one of the grandsons for Richard Zamboni is, I don't understand this either, is a huge Eagles fan. And we've kind of tolerated it, but we hope that he'll eventually grow out of it. And as a Viking fan, where they got whooped by the Eagles instead of being able to have the Super Bowl in Minnesota, be the first team to play on their home field, it gives me more passion against those dreaded Eagles. Do either of you have anything that you would like to add? Is there any organizations that benefit the facility or that you'd like to talk about? We've done some podcasts in the past, one of which was with Travis Roy, who unfortunately passed away last year, and his foundation. Do you guys have anything like that that you'd like to talk about and promote on the podcast to the millions of listeners that we have?
I mean, we got a bunch of hockey organizations. We have the Santa Rosa Junior Hockey Club has been around for a long time. I think it might outdate the ice arena, but they're all volunteer run, and they do a pretty damn good job of running a youth hockey program. And there's some people in that organization that work really, really hard to bring a good level of hockey to Santa Rosa, because we have a lot of kids here that didn't really grow up with the game and didn't have parents that grew up with the game, and just to be able to be lucky enough for them to share their hockey knowledge and pass it on to the next generation and keep growing hockey as a sport and an activity in Santa Rosa when it's an expensive game and it takes a lot of resources to play it. And if we really want to be able to have kids get their foot in the door and turn hockey into a lifelong activity if they really fall in love with it.
Thank you. It was great. It was great to learn more about both of you. And I would love to sell a new machine up there so that I could come visit and try some tofu and carnitas. We want to thank everyone for listening in to another episode of Ask the Zamboni Experts podcast. Have a question for one of our experts or an idea for a future episode? Please email your questions or requests to info@zamboni.com. For more information and additional podcast episodes, please visit zamboni.com/podcast or search Ask the Zamboni Experts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. This is Doug Peters wishing you an ice day.